Yeah, hello, Ms. Korka. Thank you for coming on today and for agreeing to speak with me. And
Oh, it's a great pleasure.
thank you. And my first question is like, how did Greek cultural preservation practices change as a result of the 2008 economic crisis, right? The 2008 economic crisis was very difficult for everyone, but especially Greece. And how did that change preservation practices?
Yes, so it did affect everything, everyone's life, and I think everyone's, let's say, working environment as well. Because Greece is so full of antiquities, of course, this is so demanding that you always need funding and you need personnel, and it's a great challenge. And when you think of what exists, which you need to preserve, and what is coming to light every day, it's really a huge task. So, of course, we did have a shortage of personnel because very often during the summer months, we could hire personnel, let's say on a temporary basis, maybe for 8 months, to help work during the summer, which is the most appropriate time for the progress of works. But that wasn't easy because we had the control of what we could do in every aspect. So we couldn't hire people because of the crisis. And that made things difficult. And not only that, but people who retired were never replaced. So then you were lacking the permanent personnel that you usually have. That meant that the people who remained had to work for 10 people. They already worked very hard because it's impossible to avoid working over hours and overtime. And when you're involved, you get involved and you're passionate about what you do. Otherwise, you don't follow the cultural track. It's very demanding. Wages are rather low, so you really have to love what you do in order to do so. So they worked harder than ever, working like 10 people each, morning to night, without having any additional let's say, compensation for what they did. But that is how it progressed. And we did get European programs, which means that you know how to make a proposal and that you're among the ones that are chosen. Because when it's a European program, you have to really present a good program to get the funding. So we did get a lot of programs, so that helped us a lot.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, almost in every country, archaeology, preservation are the ones that get the lower budget during the state, let's say, maybe, what could we say? The way that the funding is disposed to each ministry.
Mhm.
And that always means that the Ministry of Culture gets less than everyone else. But that's not only in Greece, you see. It's
Mhm.
a general problem. And even classical studies in university are shut down very, very often. It's a new world, very directed towards outcome, towards benefits. And sometimes cultural issues need time so that you won't make mistakes.
Mhm.
So, apart from having new programs which were accepted and working very hard, I must say that that exhausted the personnel that still exists. But they do continue so many years after the crisis started. And unfortunately, it's that when we were ready to get out of the economic crisis, then COVID broke out. And that brought a new crisis. And then, of course, all the conflicts all around the region and actually on a global basis have again affected the world.
Mhm.
So we're right in the middle of two or three crises at the same time, one following the other, which doesn't help the situation.
Yeah.
However, I must say that what has been achieved in these past years is really amazing. If one looked at it just from the outcome and results, which you can see, you would say, but you never had a crisis. How did you manage?
Mm.
Well, that is the miracle that happens when you are really dedicated to what you do. And even 5 people can make the difference and makes because they're very, very experienced by now. And that's how it really worked. Of course, we're having changes in the cultural sector. We're now having 5 museums which have a board of trustees, let's say, after the Acropolis Museum, which is semi-independent and has a board of trustees. There always was the Kanellopoulos Museum, a small archaeological museum at the foot of the Acropolis. And now we're having 5 major museums, which are being sort of like semi-independent by having a board of trustees. This is very new. It remains to be seen. But all this is the outcome of crisis. And you also have sponsors who have come in to help major projects on the Acropolis, near the new library area where you also have various cultural events like theaters and things like that. And that's an area where you can see archaeological remains which were excavated in situ. And then you also have musical events, various festivals, and the library and the theater. So it's a new area. New areas are being, let's say, formed, like the old airport station, not the one which exists now, but the previous one. So this is another new project, combining everything, even condominiums and all the other, let's say, activities which you can have all joined together with our archaeological remains. So it's a new way of trying to have development running along culture, whether it's through art or whether it's through archaeology.
Mhm. Interesting. So you talked at one point about so the ministries, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the actual ministries funding decreased as a result of the crisis, right? Because, and it's not just Greece, right? That happened everywhere. But
Yeah.
because of the crisis, the EU money and help increased, right?
No, it's that there are programs which are open for all European countries. And these are the programs, apart from the funding that you get from the European Union as a member. Now, apart from that, there are programs which you bid for. And you have to have a good, these calls are for all Europeans. So you have to have a good consortium of experts in various countries. And you really have to have a good project. Otherwise, they won't select you. So we happened to be selected for many programs, which meant that our people knew how to deposit a proper dossier, a proper proposal, and that we had the possibility of linking together with experts in other countries, because we do have this network, because whether you have archaeologists or conservatives or restorers in Greece, they're well known because they're hands-on. You see, everything is in Greece is state centered. We don't have private initiatives which happen. It's all controlled by the state. And that's good and bad at the same time. But for sure, you have the power to have the same level of expertise everywhere, the same level of good, a high level of production in whatever you do, and that you have people that are well known and are asked from other countries to go there and help. So that means that they're acknowledged on a European basis. So we got those programs because we had the possibility of being better than others. So that's how we tried to cover up for a lot of projects.
And I know that you might not remember, this was a while ago, but do you by any chance know just a name of one of the programs? I just wanted, it's just for my own research afterward.
Well, I will tell you one program which, for example, we got, and it is a program which didn't affect the ministry so much, but I'm just giving you an idea.
Yes.
But also other non-governmental organizations, as well as museum, depending on the state, like the Cycladic Museum, which is dependent on the ministry, but independent at the same time. So we got a huge Horizon program. And the leaders were the Cypriots. We are part of it as the Hellenic Blue Shield Committee. And I'm the chair of that committee. But it involved the Cycladic Museum, and it had to do with issues that are the protection of cultural heritage. And you have almost something like 10 other European countries involved in that specific project, which is about the cultural hub and its sustainable development all over Europe. So you see, we got the funding to be able to present results by proposing experts in the fields. Like, we know the experts in Greece, and they're mostly employees of the Ministry of Culture. So the Ministry of Culture here benefits through the results of the program and through the involvement of the Cycladic Museum in such a program. And that Horizon program, because they all are of a high budget, are above 1 million euro. So you see, this is one case that I know very well of because I'm involved as well. Now, for example, in another case, we got funding, which is not European, but it comes not from the Ministry of Culture, but from the Ministry of Technology and Innovation. And it's about our excavation in ancient Tenea. And there we have the universities who got the funding, and the excavation, which is in the Corinthia, and it's a systematic excavation under my direction. And we got this program, which is called Colony, because it tries to target on the metropolis of Corinth and its various colonies in antiquity, and how through the analysis of anthropological remains like DNA and other such analysis, how you get results concerning whether you found burials of people coming from the Corinthia. And it's very, very interesting because we did get that outcome.
Mhm.
So we have tried to find funding through various means. And as I said, we have also addressed major cultural sponsors like the Onassis Foundation or the Niarchos Foundation, and they have been providing really enormous funds for monuments and various cultural installations.
Mhm. I see. So a little switching gears a little bit, and this, I don't know if how much the ministry actually focuses on this, but I did want to bring it up because I saw it somewhere on my research. So as a result of the 2008, right, financial crisis, would you say that there was an increase in like art crime and art theft and heritage type of crime, if you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, this in general had started earlier
Mhm.
when ISIS, the Taliban, started not only destroying monuments to make their point, which was really barbarous because you saw them destroying monuments, but they also, and that was known all over, they sold cultural objects
Yeah.
to get the funding for their armies.
Yeah.
And so everyone became very, very, very sensitized on the issue of illicit trafficking because it had a huge impact on the Western world because the Western world was attacked in the countries themselves by such radicals. And so that had come earlier. Now, during the economic crisis, which did not affect Greece only, but many other countries, from what the non-governmental organizations have been able to gather as information, yes, illicit trafficking has grown. Now, the difficult thing about this is that you don't know when it's happening. Otherwise, you would have stopped it.
Yeah.
Illicit excavation, illicit trafficking is something which is very difficult to spot and get your hands on, even though we have very, very important seizures of antiquities. And actually, in the case of New York, where you have the famous Greek Michael Bogdanos, who is an attorney, and he's totally dedicated to cultural heritage. The sequestration and the seizure of antiquities rises to thousands of objects. And that means it helps the source countries get them back. Now, in Greece, very many returns have happened because illicit trafficking took place and it was spotted. But until you get the objects back, it takes a long time, especially if you go through the legal route, which means that it's very costly and very time consuming. And the international law actually does not have a mechanism of obliging the party that has taken the objects to give them back. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
It's more like an ecology, meaning that you wish that it's ethical, that it's moral for it to happen. You have international conventions that are in place at least 1970, but the burden of the proof lies on the requesting country.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes things difficult. Many countries have not ratified the international conventions. Anyhow, it's a tough job. And because I'm very involved in this, I'm well aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the number seems to have risen in these past years without any doubt. It's the third crime internationally, but still, we're not aware of the exact amount of objects that are stolen, and so you can't really calculate the money that goes into it.
Yeah, for sure. So I had another question, and I saw this was something that you wrote about, and this is about the Parthenon marbles or the Elgin marbles, or whichever.
Yeah, well, definitely the Parthenon
Yeah,
marbles because they
exactly.
belong to the Parthenon,
The
not
Parthenon
Elgin.
marbles.
Yeah.
So my question is, so and correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the understanding that like around the time of the Olympics in 2004 and in that area, there was some serious discussions going on, correct? For the
Well,
return?
actually, discussions regarding this issue took place right after the Greek state was independent in 1830. But on, let's say, a governmental basis, for sure, the mandate was given to the Ministry of Culture in 82 to Melina Mercouri to go ahead and request the return of the Parthenon marbles. Now, in the beginning, of course, the UNESCO supported this request with really a very important amount of votes, which took place in Mexico, showing that most countries were in favor of the return of the Parthenon marbles. But at that time, England wasn't a member of UNESCO.
Yeah.
It had retreated, as well as the United States. And so we first asked as a government to government for the return. The answer was no. Then we went through the UNESCO procedures. And again, we received a no answer through the same process. And since then, the issue is on the agenda of a special intergovernmental committee. And supposedly a solution is sought, but up to now, nothing has come out. At various times, let's say that meetings took place on a very confidential basis. And at times we have come closer to reaching some kind of compromise, and others no.
Yeah.
Now, very recently, what is something new is that on a regular basis, the Prime Minister was involved with the issue. It wasn't only the Ministry of Culture, with the help, let's say, of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but it was the Prime Minister himself being personally involved. So this was new during the government which we had, because now we're in the interim of elections and we're waiting for the new government to appear at the end of June. Now, that meant that it really triggered a response from the British side, because for the first time openly, they said that, yes, why not We're sure we can find some kind of solution. We're not sure whether it will happen, but anyway, we can sit and talk about it and talk about reciprocal loans and things like that.
Mhm.
Of course, all this, because it's most recent, is totally confidential. But they were open and they made statements in the press. So that meant that they really exposed their will to do something about it. And this is very positive.
Interesting.
So it's a very long issue. It's perhaps the issue which everyone knows about all over the world.
Yes.
It's sort of like a thorn that's there for years, and it will never go away unless it's resolved. And it's bound to be resolved sooner or later, of course.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, my understanding from what you said is maybe that this has been on and off, but I will ask, do you think that again, 2008 played any role in the relationship regarding the marbles?
No, the economic crisis did not
Okay.
affect this issue because it was so high on the let's say list of things that always happen that it didn't affect what we did. Perhaps Brexit affected the British side, perhaps. For sure, the whole world is undergoing a new era on how do we go about supporting cultural foundations.
Yeah.
How do they, let's say, get their daily bread?
Yeah.
How do they continue to be sustainable? Even organizations, non-governmental, regarding museums have met very recently, as they do often, but now let's really see what right now is the real terminology for a museum. What does it stand for now? Because the times have changed. So they're giving a new aspect of what a museum needs to stand for. And for sure, what is added there is that the museum has to be ethical, to be able to give messages and material for thought to its visitors, whether this is the internet or through personal visits. And museums like the British Museum and others, very, very recently, in these last years, have started returning cultural objects, the one after the other. There is something like an avalanche, which is, one following the other. And museums all over the world that were negative for years have returned objects to Aborigines, human remains, Nazi loot, lots of things. And I think that shows that the world needs to come closer, and culture is the best platform to do that. And then make other agreements as well, which can follow. But for sure, bring people closer. And like we say, mind the gap. It's, put a bridge over the gap. So I think that all this is leading to a new world and new understanding. And I must tell you that because I did my PhD on the issue of the Parthenon marbles and what that means for the world today. And that was, of course, 20 years ago almost. But I had done a research then about returns that took place. And even then, there was a period like in from 2000 till 2000, maybe an eight, actually, you could say that we had many returns. Now there are even more.
Mhm.
And when I interviewed people in universities or museums that had sort of like lost the object because they had returned it, they said, "Oh, yes, that one. Yes, we did have it.
Mhm.
Yes, it's back. Well, no, we don't have any bad feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wonder actually why, it didn't happen for so long and there were difficulties, but now it's fine. No, of course we feel great about it.
Yeah.
So, what was the purpose of all that?"
Mhm. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, thank you. This has been great, and you've been very, very helpful and very informative. So yeah, thank you.